make sure that you never get treated like that by any taxing agency anywhere in the United States. If I have if I have an ability to teach you how to do things, I will teach you how to do them. And if you need help in an area other than California sales and use tax on aircraft, vessels, and vehicles, call me. The call is free, and I'll refer you to anybody that I know that I think can help you. Go ahead, Marcel. Now we're going to show you one of our clients'
100% worth the investment. It's not a question. When I got the letter, I told Julie, I would recommend her company to all my friends and family. So that's what I'm doing right now. My name is Bruce Cafill. I am owner of Celeste Helicopters. We're based here in Los Angeles, California. We conduct tours around the LA basin and hoping to charter passengers one day in the future. We purchased a helicopter to accommodate groups of 4, as the R66 is able to handle. And for the time that we own it, it's been working out really great for us. So we're able to do tours with up to 4 people at a time. I believe I discovered AeroMarine through a mailer in the mail, just gave them a call. I was immediately surprised with how confident their statements were, and they had a pretty good game plan for helping to make use of the interstate commerce exemption, and I decided to go with it. The test period was, as many people know, very time consuming. You do have to have your recording really tight as far as remembering to log everything you do, whether it's, fueling up or how many hours you've flown, where from, from and to. And we were doing a lot of flights, so there were a lot of logs as a result of that. But just being diligent seemed to solve the issue. And they were also very communicative about when we needed to fly more out of state in order to qualify for the exemption. So that helped me stay on top of it. You always have that nagging doubt in your mind. So I was just hoping for the best, but when the letter came, they did pull through, and their advice definitely worked for us. Admittedly, my jaw was on the floor. We did everything that we were supposed to do, and sure enough, it played out as it was supposed to. So it's nice to know that you have their support. I don't think I would have been able to do it on my own. I can wholeheartedly recommend Aero and Marine. You won't be disappointed. You're in good hands. I leave you with that.
So don't be shy. We need your questions. That'll make this more interactive and more useful to anyone who's watching. If you're on the live stream, please, if you're on Zoom, please unmute your camera, so sometimes I can just ask questions and you can just give me a thumb up. So don't be shy. Ask questions. Hit the unmute button and ask halfway. Go ahead, Stella. This is something that very few of you know about. The Supreme Court proclaimed that every citizen of the United States has a right as well as an obligation to avoid taxes. Our U.S. Supreme Court decided that and published it. What you don't know is that it was in 1934. The legal right of a taxpayer to decrease the amount of what otherwise would be his taxes or altogether avoid them can, by means which the law permits, cannot be doubted. It's just amazing that there are people still in our government that walk around talking about people paying their fair share. There's no such, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, there's no such concept in the law. Go ahead, Sal. Here's some more on that same subject. This was published by Federal Appellate Judge Learned Hand, who anybody who's ever been in law school, they know who he is. Everyone does it, rich and poor alike, and all do it right, for nobody owes any public duty to pay than the law demands. Over and over again, the courts have said there is nothing sinister in doing this. So what this company does is supported by the Supreme Court of the United States and acknowledged by Judge Leonard Hand. So you have the right to avoid taxes legally. Tax evasion is illegal. Tax avoidance is legal. Tax evasion, let's say you have an airplane and you decide to hide it from the government by keeping it in a hangar that's out in a county, in some rural thing or some friend's hangar. Tax avoidance is legal. I've done over 2,400 of these cases, and not one of those clients has ever paid a dime in tax. All they have to do is follow their consultant's advice. 2,400 people have hired us. Cases, I have to correct that because in some cases it's multiple people. Go, Marcel. If you don't understand the law, you can get in trouble. Any purchaser of a vehicle or vessel or aircraft who registered outside the state of California for the sole purpose of evading the payment of taxes due under this part, which means under this regulation, there'll be a liability penalty of 50% of the tax. So if you buy something that your tax is $100,000, it'll double it. So be very careful. And you can always call this company and get free advice. We don't charge anyone until we find out there's something we can do for you. Then we'll tell you, and we'll tell you exactly how much tax you'll be avoiding, and we'll tell you exactly what we're going to charge you. So don't be afraid. Some people don't know the difference between sales tax and use tax. In this industry, use tax, a lot of times people think that's property tax. Sales tax and use tax are both a transactions tax. Property tax is issued by the county. So if you get a written communication from your county, that's a property tax question. If it comes from the state or the CDTFA, California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, it's a transactions tax. And if you take a good look at that, it tells you exactly what happens. Sales tax is a very narrow definition. It's where you take possession inside California out of the inventory who someone has a California seller's permit. Only under those two circumstances is it a sales tax transaction. All other transactions is use tax, and it has to be a use tax transaction because all use tax transactions are the obligation of the purchaser, and they start with an outside of California possession. Subtle things, but you need to know these definitions to be safe going forward in your life.
Tom, can I interrupt you real quick? I had a question. This is Aaron.
Okay.
Regarding a pre-owned yacht purchase
Go ahead.
listed by a California retailer. The boat's currently sitting in Mexico.
Okay.
So if it's a California retailer, the boat is listed in an LLC. I don't know if you've covered this yet.
Go ahead. Ask the complete
So
question.
boat's listed in an LLC. We'd be taking possession of it in Mexico with the intention of bringing it back into San Diego to operate. One of the business partners is an out-of-state resident, and I would be considered an in-state resident at this time.
Okay.
Is it a 6-month window or a 12-month window on that one?
If you're a California resident, which you are, the test period is 12 months long. If you take possession of it in Mexico, which is outside the state of California, and it's in the inventory of a California retailer, you're only meeting one of the the parts of the definition of a sales tax transaction. So it's automatically, because you're going to take possession of it in Mexico, it's a use tax transaction. So you can use what is known as the principal use test, which we're going to go into more detail a little farther down the line.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
So
you.
what you're actually doing is you're when you register the boat, are you going to register it in each of your names separately?
I don't believe so. We'd probably put it in a holding company.
Okay.
At this point, I'm doing a lot of legwork and pre-purchase homework to
Okay.
establish the business first before we make the move on buying the boat.
Well, you're in the right place, and I will specifically cover the principal use test. Plus, we'll talk about the LLC of a vessel purchase, because there's a lot of misinformation about that. A lot of information, and it's being put out by a lot of Southern California attorneys, and it's based on a misunderstanding, but I don't want to give you too much. We'll get to it a little bit later.
Perfect.
All right. So any aircraft, vessel, or vehicle is subject to California use tax if any of the following apply. The aircraft was purchased by a California resident. Now, this is a very important thing as it's defined in Section 516 of the California Vehicle Code. If you are dealing with someone who's getting their information from an out-of-state CPA, they're not going to know that California uses the DMV codes to establish definitions, to establish whether you're an in-state resident or an out-of-state resident. Or if the aircraft, vessel, or vehicle is subject to property tax in California during the first 12 months of ownership. So if you're bringing the vessel into California and the guys are walking around the docks and the property tax guys find you, you're going to make it, they're going to also make you subject to the use tax. And then the third thing is if it's used or stored or registered, that or is a piece of the English language separating things. It's not meant to mean Oregon. Go ahead, Marcelo. All right. So I'm going to take you through how to understand whether you're going to be considered a resident of California using the DMV vehicle codes. But I'm going to need you to shift your viewpoint. For the purpose of the next few minutes, presume that you've gone to work for the state of California in their consumer use tax section known as cuts. And you want to be a hero, and you want to make every aircraft, vessel, or vehicle that comes across your desk subject to tax by making someone a resident of California. So shift your viewpoint, because if I give you all these, you're immediately going to start your defense, say, well, that's not subject to me, that's not me, that's not me. Shift your viewpoint to the person attacking you. You be the guy that wants to work for the state of California. And you ask yourself, as we go through these items one by one, how could you, being me, use these to make everything taxable? So go ahead, Marcelo. So address where registered to vote. I've been asked not to get off on my political rants, but there's an awful lot of people in this country these days that are more registered in more than one state. So be aware, don't register to vote in California if you're not a resident of California. Excuse me. Location of employment of place of business. So think with this. Let's say that you work for some kind of a consulting firm in Ohio, and they send you to California to work on some kind of an audit. If you were trying to make that person a resident of California, wouldn't that make you a resident of California? Because you're in California while you're doing the business. Payment of resident tuition at a public institution of higher education. This is a tricky one. I always thought that anyone from outside the state of California paid non-resident tuition at a public institution because they were from another state. when my daughter was, well, she must have been 17, was looking for colleges to go to, she went all over the country. And she found a website that allowed kids to trade their residency. So that meant that someone from New Jersey who came to California who went through this website could pay resident tuition at higher institutions. So you got to be careful with that stuff and just don't presume you know. If you ever get a tinge when you ask yourself, if someone asks you a question or somebody's talking about something that just doesn't sound right, go and look it up. I'll offer you this. Anytime you have a question about taxes in California, sales taxes in California, call me. The call's free. Here's another one that will catch you through. Attendance of dependents at a primary or secondary school. You know where your kids are going to school. But let's say that you're the same resident of Ohio working for that consulting firm. You get married, you have a divorce, you get married, you have kids, and then you have a divorce, and your wife moves to California. That makes you a resident of California for the purpose of sales and use taxes on aircraft, vessels, and vehicles. Little e, filing a homeowner's property tax exemption. I find, especially the guys out in the Northwest who get tired of the fact they never see the sunshine, they also have a home in Palm Springs or somewhere out here in the desert. And their local CPA files their homeowner's property tax exemption because they say, well, they should do that. It'll save money. That makes them a resident of California, according to this. F, renting or leasing a home for use as a residence. Let's say that you're still that resident of Ohio. You do you had a great year. You bring your family to California and you spend 2 months in Southern California trying to go to all the amusement parks down there. Aren't you renting or leasing a home for use as a business? Remember, I'm asking you and I'm telling you how you can use, shifting your viewpoint, use these to make everything taxable. G, declaration of residency to obtain a license or any other privilege or benefit not ordinarily extended to a non-resident. I think you're gonna know off the top of your head if you've ever done that. What you don't know is that makes you a California resident. H, possession of a California's driver's license. If you're here long enough, the DMV probably requires you to have a California driver's license. So be aware of that. Now let's all take a deep breath with all having gone through A through H and look at little I. What I'm going to ask you is, how would you, as the guy who wants to get promoted, use little I? Other acts, occurrences, or events that indicate presence in the state is more than temporary or transient. Aaron, how would you use it?
Have you earned any money in the state? Are you liable for an income tax in the state? That's one that I clearly qualify for. Has your vehicle been in the state longer than, I believe it's 6 weeks now? I'm not 100% on that.
Those are all
Are there
good.
events an arrest?
They're
I
all
don't
good
know if that
answers.
one's a ticket, traffic ticket.
Yep. Rob Harrison, how would you use it if you wanted to get promoted? Make sure you unmute yourself, Rob. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay, yes, Tom, how are you, sir? Thank you.
I'm doing great.
I never did get the name of the lawyer that you sent, but since we're talking about sales tax, if I move two of my airplanes, which are in a Wyoming LLC, which is owned by an irrevocable trust, I am the managing member of the LLCs. I have already notified the FAA of address changes. And yes, we're paying use tax because there's no way that I can avoid that. What I want to avoid is having the state, when the FAA tells them that I have moved the ownership of the LLC, which holds the airplanes, into a different trust with the same beneficiaries as the trust out of which I have moved them. I'll leave them in the LLC in the new trust. Will the state come after me for sales tax?
Interesting.
Good question. If it's still in the, and Marcella will send you the referral to Steve Hofer.
Thank you, Marcel.
Again, and we have both your new and your old email address. Marcella, only send it to the Gmail address without putting the Yahoo mailing address on it.
Yeah, Yahoo is never mind.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yeah, never mind.
Alpha,
You currently have the airplanes registered in an LLC. They're still going to be registered in that LLC. All you're going to do is change the entity that owns the LLC.
that is correct.
Then there will be no change in the registration at the FAA, so they'll never know about it.
That's kind of what I thought, and I appreciate your backing me up. You know, I have mentioned that, and I only admit this to good friends, I am an attorney, but being a lawyer myself, I have learned that I know almost nothing about the law.
I completely understand that. Glenn, how would you use little I?
Sorry about that. Say that again.
How would you use little I that's on your screen there? Other acts or occurrences or events?
Ooh, I would say any type of billable costs that have a paper trail would be my answer on that, or am I off the mark?
No, I'm just gathering data. There's no right or wrong answer. Well, there actually is a right answer, but I'm going to do that a little bit later.
Hopefully I was close, Tom.
Hey, Mark, how would
Tom,
you
good
use?
morning, good sir. Nice to see you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. So how would you use, if you wanted to be a hero as an auditor for the state, how would you use little I?
Yeah, basically whatever Glenn said, because he's smarter than I am. But
Okay.
yeah, I think, yeah, same. Honestly, I think everyone's covered it.
Yep. Okay. Hey, Vic, this is Tom. How would you use it? Apparently, Vic is step away from his computer. Adrian, how would you use it? Same for you. So the real answer, and this is the thing that catches people, is I would use it any way I could possibly think of to just coming out of left field. So all the examples that were given are all correct. And this guy who wants to get promoted is going to use and add a ton of stuff to that. And if you don't know that they're going to treat you as a resident instead of a non-resident, that makes your problem taxable. So go ahead, Sal. The thing you need to remember is the taxpayer, that being you, now you're no longer the person who's trying to go to work for the state of California. You're the purchaser of an aircraft, vessel, or vehicle. The taxpayer is not the one who gets to decide whether he or she is an out-of-state resident. Oh, I got your message, Adrian. Thank you. And worse than that, if the CDTFA discovers the owners or shareholders of an out-of-state company are California residents, the CDTFA under little I can decide to apply the 12-month requirement, which means they looked at you as a resident as opposed to a non-resident. You see how this kind of all circles around back to how you got to treat them like they'll do anything to collect the taxes.
Because they will.
And they will. Thanks for the help, Aaron.
Right.
So the key questions to consider when you're planning for an exemption is, have you met all the usage requirements? Or if you're planning it in the future, can you? 2, have you consulted a tax expert on compliance? And the reason that part is in there, and remember, Marcella, this is for you. The next time we do this slide, capitalize all the letters on that one. If I'm telling you to hire a tax consultant on compliance, I'm talking about my company, Aron Marine Tax Professionals, 916-691-9192. The call is free. You don't have anything to lose. And thirdly, do you have a pre-purchase planning strategy that will help you with that? And in aviation, normally I will send you to, like I did with Rob, to an aviation attorney, because that's a very complicated and jumbled up problem that you have to work through. Go ahead, Sella. There are three kinds of sales and use tax exemptions for airplanes. One of them is the principal use test. That's for people who are using their property for personal use only, no business use. The second one, which is what we use 99% of the time for airplanes, is for people who are using their airplane for interstate business use. And the third is the common carrier exemption. Now, before we start talking about these, I'm going to take a little survey. Are you interested and or inclined, if you're a potential aircraft owner, in using the common carrier exemption? So for those of you who you can't sign on and click on your microphone, just text Stella and she'll know. Yes. All right. So Adrian said he's interested, so you're all going to have to listen to it all. So let's go to the next slide. The principal use test exemption. We primarily use this test for vessels. This is basically the way I normally consider it. There's two steps to it. So the first step is you must take possession of it while it's physically located out of the state. It does not mean that, excuse me, let me take a drink of water here. It doesn't mean you can't buy a boat that's currently inside California. It just as you send your purchase offer to the owner, one of your requirements is that he delivers it to you outside the 3-mile limit. If you get 3 miles offshore, you're outside the state of California. Be smart when you're doing this, especially in Southern California. You don't also get closer to Catalina Island, because Catalina Island is also considered part of California. So you have to be smart about what you're doing. You have to take possession of the vessel outside the state of California. And then you have to be able, through documentation, support the fact that you never entered California at any time during the first 12 months. So for the first year of ownership, you have to use it outside the state of California. And I got you, Vic. So there's a reason why we use that primarily for vessels, because vessels are primarily, in our experience, used for non-business reasons. Does anybody have any questions? I know it's been brief. If you have any questions about the principal use test and how you can use it personally. Okay, let's go move on then. This is the test period that we use for most aircraft. And because I told you that most of the work that we do is on aircraft. In fact, as of this point, as of the end of May, we've saved over $15 million in tax using our service. So join us and be part of that and make that number go up. So to qualify, the aircraft must be primarily used in interstate or foreign commerce during the first 12 months of ownership. This typically, I mean, that should say 6 months. I'm sorry that we didn't catch that earlier. This typically requires demonstrating that at least 50%. And our company raises the bar to 60% to allow a margin of error. Part of the reason why we have never failed one of these is of that margin of error. Why do we create a 10% margin of error? Because we know pilots are used to pushing the envelope and everything. So we know from personal experience, if I tell them 50% and they bring it in at 61, and you submit it to the board that way, at least to the state, they know that all they got to do is throw out 2 or 3 of your flights and they're going to make it taxable. So we have found that by increasing the margin of error by 10%, we have that huge success rate. So let's talk about how the difference between interstate commerce and the other exemptions. It has qualifying requirements just to get into the test period, which we corrected to, actually it's a 6-month test period. And the 6-month test period does not start until the first moment that you enter California. The first step of the 3 qualifying steps are: first, out-of-state possession; second, first functional use. And to do a demonstration, we'll say, for the purpose of this discussion, that you took possession in Billings, Montana. Montana is a no sales tax state, so we know that you aren't inadvertently subject to another state's taxes. You have to fly from Montana to another state, not yet into California. So you go from Montana to Reno, Nevada for business. That's the first functional use flight. If it's a jet, there has to be a passenger on it. Or if it's a propeller aircraft, if it has more than 6 seats, there has to be a passenger on it. So if you're buying a small Cessna and there's only a total of 4 seats, you don't have to have a passenger. So first step, out-of-state possession. Second step, the first functional use, interstate flight. And then the third step is you bring it into California. And let's say you bring it into Sacramento and you land at McClellan. You buy fuel on the first day that you land. That fuel ticket has a date, a location, and a tail number. That date, starts the 6-month test period, the first day that you land in California. So all of the flight hours that you put on the airplane before you enter California are not part of the test period. Once you land in California, you start the test period, and you start counting the hours that are in the test period with the first flight out of McClellan after the first day that you land there. So let's say that during that 6 months you flew the airplane for 100 hours, and I'm obviously rounding this off so I can do the math. 60 of those 100 hours would have to be flights that crossed a state line or an international border, and you have third-party support for your business reason to be in that city on that day. And if it seems complicated to you, once you hire us, your consultant will walk you through that, and you actually call your consultant every time you're getting ready to take off and say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Will this work? And she'll walk you through that to make sure that you understand it. So the thing to know is what the test period does not start until you enter California. And then it's based on the total amount of flight hours that are put on the airplane during the 6 months. Total amount of hours. There's no hours thrown out of this test period. So is there any questions on how the interstate commerce test works?
This one
Anybody?
applies exclusively to aircraft, Tom,
Yes.
or does a
Yeah,
vessel?
well, you can't. There is a version of it called the interstate nautical miles traveled, but you think about how if you're in Southern California, you're going to have to go back and forth to Mexico for business. If you're in Northern California, you'd have to go to Oregon or Washington for business. You can use it. I've never had anybody do that, but it can be done.
Okay. It seems like the principal use would still, the principal use test would still get triggered.
Yes. If I understand you correctly, I want to make sure you don't have to do both. If you do the interstate commerce test and you passed it, they don't also look at the principal use test.
Okay.
Is that clear now?
It is.
All right. Does anybody else on the program have any questions about the interstate commerce test? Well, if you do, and you're thinking about hiring us, you can call me. I'll walk you through it. And I want you to keep asking me questions until your knowledge level comes up to the certainty to hire us. All right, next one, Sal. The common carrier exemption is an aircraft only exemption. Any aircraft that is used in common carrier, which is Part 135 exclusively, more than 50% of the time in over a 12-month test period, it's going to be exempt. We're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to raise it to 60%. The exception to this test period is that you can actually take possession of it inside California and still meet the exemption. I'm going to talk you out of it because there's ways that I can put you in the interstate commerce test, use the out-of-state Part 135 flights to qualify for the interstate commerce test, because all common carrier flights are going to qualify for the interstate commerce test if they cross a state line or an international border. And the reason I want to do that is I'm going to shorten your test period to 6 months instead of 12 months. So it's available to all aircraft owners. And if you buy an airplane and lease it to a current Part 135 holder, you can still use it. In fact, most of my clients buy their airplanes personally and then lease them to Part 135 carriers. But it can be, the reason I don't like to use this is because it puts all of your ability to avoid the tax in the hands of the Part 135 carrier. And not every Part 135 carrier is going to want to give you his documentation. And I will tell you about this specific thing is that in the past, they used to allow the Part 135 carrier to redact the person's name. Adrian is asking me, does each leg have to be occupied to qualify? Under Federal Regulation 135, there has to be a passenger on board or property. So there has to be one or the other. If it's a deadhead flight or a repositioning flight, that is automatically flown under Part 91, which is a non-qualifying 135 flight. So you have to be careful, because otherwise, if you flew from San Francisco to New York, and it'll say it took 5 hours, and then it just repositioned back, it'd cancel it out. You'd never be on the other side of the test. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions about the charter test? Thank you. So you've done well. Thanks, Adrian. Go to the next chart, next slide. Let's talk about the LLC myth, and this is more prevalent in the vessel industry than it is in the aviation industry. There's a tremendous amount of people in Southern California that think if you purchase an LLC, you've legally avoided the tax. That's a misinterpretation of the law, in my opinion. If the LLC is an ongoing business, it's filing income taxes, profit and loss statements, and the vessel is merely a piece of equipment for that LLC, like a typewriter and a desk and a computer, yes, that's all true. But if the only thing in that LLC is the ownership certificate of the vessel, it's not true. You are using the form of an LLC to evade, if you remember what I talked about, evade and avoid, to evade taxes. It is my belief that's committing tax fraud. Secondarily, there's a good reason to never purchase an LLC. Now, I'm personally going through a situation where I'm attempting to buy other companies. And I always tell the guys that I will only do an asset purchase, because if I buy an LLC, I'm purchasing all of their assets as well as all of their liabilities, known and unknown. So if you buy a boat that's say has been into Mexico and then the operator left and there was some kind of dispute with the maintenance facility or the fuel purchase facility, There's no change in ownership. You bought the ownership. You owe whatever debts, and in Mexico they'll probably impound it, which means that what'd you buy? You bought the liabilities, known and unknown. So that's a reason as a buyer you should never fall for that. And third of all, I'll ask you the most important question that should dispel this myth completely. If it's in fact true that you can buy an LLC, why isn't every aircraft owner, aircraft vessel and vehicle in the state of California owned by an LLC? Anybody who's trying to tell you that that will work, ask them those questions. You are now armed to overcome those problems. I don't suggest doing it. Take it through the test period. Anybody have any questions? I know we're about to wrap up here pretty quick. And oh, there she is. Stephanie's on board. Stephanie, did you catch any of this at all? So I could ask if you got any questions.
Hi, no, I didn't. I was at the barn riding my horse, and unfortunately, I missed it all.
Well, call me personally at 916-691-9192 and ask me whatever questions you were hoping to resolve, and I'll go over it with you personally one-on-one.
Okay, thanks. Airplane TV and we keep it Camarillo. So we kind of know about the tax thing, but yeah, I could ask you if you have any more insight. This is something we're not doing correctly.
Okay, just call me and ask me.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Miss Ella. So, are there any questions? Put yourself in that nice, comfortable looking orange chair and ask me one-on-one.
All right, Tom, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
The vessel that we're considering purchasing of, I already know we're going to probably retain you as a consultant on this thing when we get closer to purchase anyway. But let's say I form a holding company LLC out of Montana. I'm a resident of Montana, but I also am going to be caught as a resident of California. If I stay out of the original business and I just use my business partner, a resident of Montana, as an out-of-state company purchase, can I shorten the test period to 6 months?
Using the principal use test?
The principal use test. Yeah, I think that's probably where we're going to get the most caught up in the principal use test on the vessel. It is LLC owned, and
so let me
I haven't done the due diligence to know if that LLC has any liabilities or not.
Is it a brand
purchase
LLC?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Say that
You're
again.
forming a brand new LLC?
We would be.
Yeah, well then it is, you don't have to worry about it having any liabilities because it didn't exist. It's like a brand new.
So I would just buy the boat out of their LLC. It's already LLC owned.
Yeah, you buy it from their LLC to your new LLC. Now, let me answer your question. If you can pass that DMV test that we talked about, and I think you said what you were thinking about doing was only having your partner, who is definitely an out-of-state resident.
Yes.
Which would mean you'd pass the DMV thing. Then it does not shorten the test period. It's still a 12-month test period. It just looked at differently. If you're an out-of-state resident, as long as it's out of the state, I use 60%. So it's 220 days of the first 365, then it will meet the test. Instead of being, if you're a California resident, it's 365 of the 365. But if you're actually an out-of-state resident, it shortens the qualifying miles that's required.
The qualifying time.
No, so it's a great question. But what you have to also know is that there's two parts of the test. The days outside, which is 220 as a minimum, and the nautical miles traveled. So if you kept it outside the state, let's say it was in Ensenada, and you never used it, and it has no miles, nautical miles on it, and you bring it into California, you're going to put nautical miles on it, right? So
Yep.
you have to be careful and make sure that you make use of it, which is the nautical miles part of the test period. And that's the part most people miss. Most people go, when they're reading use tax rules, they read it and they stop reading it exactly at the point that they think, oh, I got to use those couple of lines. But if you don't meet every part of the regulation, it's taxable. So when you use the principal use test, the first part is days, 220 days out of 365, and you can come in and out. They don't have to be continuous. Okay. Because we use this for motorhomes also.
So it can come into California waters, get service work, get let's say we haul it out and bottom paint it.
Yes,
Put it
just
back in,
long,
it's
if you're
gotta
going to
get
do any kind of maintenance work on it, make sure what I would do, because I'm a very black and white guy, I would take it to Mexico, make sure had the 220 days done before I brought it in. Because you and I both know when things go into maintenance, things can happen that make it stay there for a long time.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, so don't go to Mexico, get the test started, then come back in and do the maintenance, because it's true it'll work, it can work, but you lose control of whether it does work. So do
Unless
the
I got
6 month outside first, then come in and do the maintenance.
okay. And what is the nautical mile? I'm doing as much homework on this as I can. And I wasn't aware that I know you have to have some miles traveled on it. Is there a limit, a minimum nautical miles
There's
traveled?
there's no limits on any of the hours required, any of the nautical miles required. On the interstate commerce is a great question, and I didn't bring that up. There's no minimum hours. So if you bought a $100 million airplane and you flew it only 10 hours, only 60% of those, or 6 hours, are required. There's no minimum usage set in the law. Thank you for making me bring that back up, because you reminded me I left it out. Anybody else have a question? You got me online now. Of course, it's also free if you call me. So, Rob, we'll get that. We'll send it to your Gmail address again. I know I've sent it a couple of times. So, we offer this free book that I wrote, How to Legally Avoid California Sales Tax on Your Aircraft or Vessel Purchase. We normally sell it for $100. If you look on the screen and you take a picture of that QR code, Marcella will send you a copy of it. It comes as an ebook.
Wow. Wow, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Just when you take a picture and you hover over the QR code, it'll open up the link and you'll be able to register to get the downloadable ebook there.
I'm not sure I'm smart enough to do that, but I'll certainly try.
Okay.
Rob, I can get that signed up for you so it goes to your email, to the Gmail.
Okay. I did the code thing. I don't know. Tom, thank you so much. This has been about the best 3/4 of an hour I've spent in the last several weeks.
Well, I appreciate the compliment very much. It is our mission as a company, remember, to help you not ever pay sales or use tax in California. That's our mission. It's help you towards financial freedom. Does anybody else have any
My
questions?
mission is to spend as less money as on taxes as possible. So we're in agreement there.
Okay. All right. So there's my contact. There's T. Alston at Aero Marine, the lady's name, right? But person J. Alston is my wife. People think she's my daughter because she looks so damn young. And she is, by the way. I'm leaving this stuff on the screen. I'm pausing and slowing down just not long enough. If you want to take a picture of that, you can take a picture of that. Aaron, do you have a proposal from us for your vessel?
Not yet.
Okay. Don't wait too long, brother.
I will not be.
Okay.
We'll be talking soon, I think, here.
Well, thank you very much for attending. And those of you who are on the live stream, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Thanks for putting
Thank
on
you,
the
Tom.
webinar.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.